This is the Jacksonville Jaguars offseason preview. Riv is now leaving because he has something to deal with on the outside. So we're going to talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars offseason. I think the Jaguars have one of the most best and promising coaching staffs in the NFL. You got Urban Meyer. Charlie Strong is there. Charlie Strong, a lot of people may not know him because he's coming from the college ranks, but he was the head coach for Louisville when Louisville had a stacked recruiting class, and he was a major part of that. Then you got Darrell Bevel, who I think is a very good OC, who didn't get to show how good he can be with Detroit. Brian Schottenheimer is there. He's their pass game coordinator. And Joe Cullen, he's their DC. I'm not too familiar with him, but he runs a 3-4 set, which means this offseason is about getting guys who are athletic and can rush the passer, and they already have two in Josh Allen and K'Lavon Chaisson. So they have $75 million in cap space, and because of that, they can go in any direction this offseason. I think the only roster cuts that can happen are probably Tyler Eifert, because Tyler Eifert wasn't that great last season. He wasn't even good last season, and that's the only bad contract on their team. But in terms of pending free agents, I think they have a few that are notable. DJ Hayden, Keelan Cole, Chris Conley, Cam Robinson, Dede Westbrook, Trey Herndon, Dustin Colquitt, and Josh Jones, who was their starting safety. Outside of that, I mean, with these guys, I would keep Keelan Cole probably. Cam Robinson is a definite. I'd keep him. And Dustin Colquitt, I'd keep him. But outside of that, and Trey Herndon, I'd keep him as well. But outside of that, everybody else can go, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of this free agent class is expendable. I would also keep Cam Robinson at the left tackle position. I feel like I was saying before, I forget exactly which team it was, but keeping that consistency on the line rather than trying to go out and fish in free agency, I think it just makes more sense. Unless you could go out and get a guy like Orlando Brown, I think would be an interesting move if you could do something like that. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, I would keep him around. And then beyond that, maybe Keelan Cole I would keep around. But honestly, I don't think maybe Cam Robinson would be the guy I would pinpoint. But I don't think any of these guys are must-keeps for them in free agency. I think this is a good year for them to get a fresh start, bringing in Urban Meyer, bringing in Trevor Lawrence, and cleansing the system.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a lot of free agents that they can target. Their positions of needs, in my opinion, are tight end, quarterback, defensive tackle, safety, and wide receiver. They're going to get Trevor Lawrence, so quarterback is not an issue no more. Wide receivers, Kenny Golladay, Corey Davis, Marvin Jones Jr., and Juju are all viable targets. I think they go Kenny Golladay because I think it's a perfect fit. They can pay Kenny Golladay a lot of money, and when you look at their receiving core, DJ Tark is more of a deep threat who can stretch the field. Kenny Golladay is going to be more of that possession receiver, that red zone threat, and Laviska Shenault, he kind of has a similar play style, but I think you can play him on the outside, sometimes in a slot. That's why I'd bring back Keelan Cole. Then you look at tight end. Jared Cook Jr. is out there, Hunter Henry, Jacob Hollister, Tyler Kroft, Robert Tonyan, Jonnu Smith. They can go in whatever direction they want to go there. Defensive tackle, that's a position I think they need a pinpoint because Taven Bryan has not lived up to his first-round hype. And Shelby Harris is there, Ndamukong Suh, Daquan Jones, Sheldon Rankins, Dalvin Tomlinson. Like, there's a bunch of guys that they can target at safety. Anthony Harris, Deron Harmon, Daniel Sorensen, Malik Hooker, Marcus May, Marcus Williams, and at cornerback, Brian Poole, Kevin Johnson, William Jackson, Mike Hilton, Xavier Rhodes, Patrick Peterson. I mean, there are so many targets. There are so many guys in free agency that they can get and vastly improve this roster. And in the draft, of course, we know they're going to draft Trevor Lawrence. But with that second round pick, with that second pick in the first round, I think they're going to draft Trayvon Moehrig, the safety out of TCU, because when you look at the defensive side of the ball, the position that they need the most is safety. Both of their starting safeties are not good. So I think Trayvon Moehrig out of TCU, he's the highest graded safety in this year's draft class. He's the no-brainer pick with the second pick that they have in the first round.
Yeah, and you mentioned that they got a lot of money to spend, so they can go out and fill a bunch of those positions that they're losing in free agency. I think that wide receiver is an important position just because you're bringing in a guy like Trevor Lawrence. You need that weapon to have alongside him. So I think a guy like Galladay makes sense. They should be in on those top 3 guys, and whichever one lands to them, I think, any of them makes sense. With a guy like Trevor Lawrence, you need that number 1 target, though. I like DJ Chark, but I don't think he's necessarily that number 1 yet. I think he could be a number 2 type, or maybe, this might sound a little crazy, you throw him in a package for Orlando Brown, and you get Orlando Brown to play the left tackle spot, and DJ Chark can be a good piece to go over to Baltimore where they're looking for wide receivers. So I think that might make a little sense. Fill in that offensive line spot, that left tackle spot. You could shore that up for a couple of years now with Trevor Lawrence being the future. If they don't make a move for Orlando Brown, I think a guy in the draft they could target is a big body from Alabama, Alex Leatherwood. He impressed at the Senior Bowl. He played well in the college football playoffs, and he is a huge, durable body. We saw the Jets take Mekhi Becton in this past draft, the biggest offensive lineman in the draft, and we saw how that panned out. I'm not saying he can move like Mekhi Becton, but having that big body on the line, I think would be nice for Trevor Lawrence coming in. Try and beef up that offensive line, get that weapon. I think those are the 2 most important things for the Jaguars moving forward this season, just because we saw it happen with, and not saying that Trevor Lawrence is Sam Darnold or Josh Rosen or any of those guys, but you see the difference when a team surrounds their young quarterback with talent, like the Bills did with Josh Allen, like the Ravens have somewhat done with Lamar Jackson, what the Chiefs did with Patrick Mahomes, compared to something like the Jets, where we haven't really seen the talent around Sam Darnold. And the examples go on. Baker Mayfield struggled, and then when he started to get the talent around him, he played much better. The coaching was right. He played much better. So I think the situation around Trevor Lawrence will dictate if he can become that next great thing. I think wide receiver and offensive line are the 2 positions they need to target the most to get him to that superstar potential.
I think Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, the points you made about Allen, Mahomes, and Jackson were good, but Baker Mayfield, I don't agree, because his rookie year, he was really good. Not much talent there. His second year, they had the same roster that they had this past season. The only difference was the head coach and change from Freddie Kitchens to Kevin Stefanski. So sometimes I just think that a quarterback either has it or he doesn't. Obviously, we both think that Trevor Lawrence has it, but when we talk about the later rounds, I think Brevin Jordan is a guy who they could target because they need a tight end. Alex Leatherwood is a good guy. I'm more banking on his potential because he really struggled in the Senior Bowl. So I'm not sure how he's going to transition. I don't think he's a first-year starter. Tyson Campbell, and then at defensive tackle, Levi Onwuzurike. A really hard name to pronounce. But all in all, these are my final offseason results for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think their offense is going to look like this: Trevor Lawrence, James Robinson, and Kenny Galladay, DJ Chark, Laviska Shenault, Tyler Eifert or Tyler Croft, Cam Robinson, Andrew Norwell, Brandon Linder, A.J. Cann, who was a really good guard last season, and Jawan Taylor. And on defense, Josh Allen, Shelby Harris or Dalvin Tomlinson, Kalavion Chason, Miles Jack, Joe Schobert, C.J. Henderson, William Jackson, Tyson Campbell, Trayvon Mulrig, and Keanu Neal. I think they take a chance on Keanu Neal. He's a guy who's been injured. He's a free agent. And at cornerback, like I said, William Jackson coming from Cincinnati. If they don't pay him, he's going to look to get a big payday. He was a really good corner last season. He's been that for the past couple of seasons. If you can have William Jackson and Chris Henderson Jr. on opposite sides from each other, I think that's a really good cornerback group. And take a chance on Keanu Neal. Take a chance. He can be the strong safety. He can also slide down and be a box linebacker and play against the run. So there are a lot of different situations there. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars are in perfect position to really change this team around like that, because not only do they have Trevor Lawrence, but this roster is not bad. A lot of guys have been injured and their defense is extremely young, but as this defense develops, we're going to see the flashes. Josh Allen, we're already seeing him becoming a really great edge rusher. Kalavion Chason has all the tools. James Robinson was one of the best running backs last season. DJ Chark, not a number 1, but can be a really good number 2. I mean, I think the Jaguars are in perfect position.
Yeah, and I feel like they're just one of those teams that fell victim to their record. I said, as a Jet fan, I said it about the Jets this year. I think their talent on the roster was much better than their record showed, and they showed it at the end of the season. And I think the same thing for the Jaguars. They were poorly coached, and I feel like when you get to a certain point in the season, you start to hear that outside noise. I feel like that affected the Jaguars, and Trevor Lawrence was starting to be talked about to them, and then once the Jets lost lost out on the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes, those last 2 weeks were a wash for them. Adding a guy like that, a guy like Trevor Lawrence, we saw him throwing at the pro day. Fingers crossed that surgery goes well, because he can really be special. Some of the throws that he was making and some of the throws that he made in college, just adding him from day one is going to immediately make them better. You'd have to imagine. And they're going to be one team for me to watch next year that can make a big jump. I don't know if they could be a playoff team, but they'll be a team to watch for me that could be one of the most interesting worst to first potentials in the league.
And people don't talk about this enough, but Gardner Minshew, not going to be the starting quarterback. You can trade him for a pick. Maybe a third, fourth rounder, but you can trade him for a pick. Let's say the Colts miss out on Darnold and they miss out on Wentz. They can trade for Gardner Minshew. I think Gardner Minshew with a good line, with okay receivers, with a great defense, can win 10 games in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I would even argue that he showed more flashes than Sam Darnold has.
He has so
throughout
far
his career. So, especially in a quarterback-needy offseason where so many teams are looking for that guy, there's no doubt in my mind they could get a pretty solid value pick for Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, without a doubt. So the future in Jacksonville is very bright because they're going to draft Trevor Lawrence, which is what everybody wanted, especially Jets fans. I wanted that to happen for the Jets.
Pain.